It's a pleasure to have you all here in the online session. Feel free to, this is an interactive session, so feel free to interrupt if you have any questions, raise doubts, or just unmute yourself and ask questions, which is most welcome in this session. So the intent of this session is to introduce you to one of the popular programming languages. Let me just share my screen. One sec. Okay. So, as I was saying, that the intent of this session is to introduce you to one of the popular programming languages called Python. And this is, the language has been popular for a number of things, including website development and a lot of other scientific and computational tasks, because it is very easy to learn. But nowadays, it is especially known for working in data science. And the intent is to introduce you with Python and give you the glimpse of how it looks like to getting started with data science with this programming language. So I hope you'll all enjoy the session. Let's start. My name is Avinash. I have been working as a senior data scientist from 5+ years, and I have an overall experience of 10+ years in the IT industry. So I'll take you through this session. The agenda is that you get a short introduction to data science and then a short introduction to basics of Python. Then we deal with some of the very popular libraries of Python, the NumPy and the pandas, which are often used for data manipulation, reading and doing basic exploratory analysis. And then once your data is ready, we'll talk about some machine learning algorithms which can be done using Python, but will not get into the details of machine learning. So this is simply an introduction of the libraries required in Python for data science and the Python programming language itself. Okay, so I hope the expectations are set, and we'll start.
Is there any audio to the video you're showing right now?
Is the audio not, is the video not audible?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, it's not.
Thank you for letting me know. Let me just check. Everything is okay.
When you present your screen, there's an option, there's a checkbox to share your system audio. Maybe try that again. So like just disable sharing, screen sharing right now, and just share it again. There'll be a little checkbox on the top left. Include system audio. I see a raise of hand. Malla, do you want to say something?
Okay, let me play the video. I believe this is audible now. Is it?
Yep, it is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, now it is audible.
Great, thank you.
People used to refer to the two pillars of discovery, theory, and experimentation, but now you got to look at computing also as a way of discovery.
In the life and medical sciences, the days of the aha moment when the test tube turns blue and you
Apologies.
People used to refer to the two pillars of discovery, theory, and experimentation, but now you got to look at computing also as a way of discovery.
In the life and medical sciences, the days of the aha moment when the test tube turns blue and you've made all your discoveries is ending. The new life science discovery paradigm is massive amounts of data, new ideas for analyzing that data, and the capability of doing it.
If you go back to 2001, it cost $100 million to sequence a genome because all that technology has been commoditized. Today, it's less than $6,000. The sequencers that are out there are generating data so fast right now that 15 petabytes of next generation sequencing information needs to be analyzed on an annual basis. The data is doubling every 8 months, and our compute capability is only doubling every 24 months. So it's going to be hard for institutions to create computing resources to be able to do this alone. This is where the cloud comes in. It makes sense to have cloud providers like Microsoft Azure to provide those resources. What's exciting is that we have access to Hadoop-based tools. HD Insight provides us an interface that enables life scientists to grok this humongous amount of data that's coming out of next-generation sequencers in a very natural way.
When we first started doing this a year ago, it took 2 weeks to analyze one genome on our computer. We now do 100 genomes a day.
So what excites me about what I'm doing in the cloud is the ability to accelerate discovery to the point that we may be able to find treatments for cancer. It's the journey of discovery that drives me more than anything else. And in the process of doing that, also being able to educate our leaders and scientists and engineers of tomorrow.
So we just saw a video talking about the use of data science in life sciences, or maybe because data science itself is domain agnostic, so maybe it's used in any of the related domains. So what is so popular about this? Why it is becoming so popular? Why data science or anything to do with data is so much in demand nowadays? Let's understand this. So first thing is that we have lots and lots of data now. Before the year 2000, the business was not using data sets to do analysis. But now that we have so much data stored, and the algorithms were existing right from like 60s or so, they started developing algorithms which could infer from the data, which could be let's say we can treat them as artificially intelligent algorithms. So they did exist, but there was not so much data, so that they could learn from that data, create models, and resolve business problems. But nowadays, data is not a problem. So when it comes to data science, it is about gaining insights from data, but it also comes to doing everything with data. So even storage of the data, processing of the data, and everything is a part of data science. When it comes to machine learning techniques, they are specifically about gaining insights and doing predictions, but we need to bring the data into a certain format in order to do that. And sometimes the data set is very, very large, that even storing the data becomes an overhead. That's what this video was talking about. It was talking about how so much data was generated in genome engineering, and it took them like 12 plus days to just sequence one genome. And nowadays they're doing it hundreds plus genomes in a day. Also, it talked about petabytes of data. So I hope you guys are aware of what is a petabyte of data. Is everyone aware? So yes, please. Please speak.
Hello. Yes, I am. It's 1000 terabyte is equal to 1 petabyte.
Okay, and yes, everyone in this session knows what is a terabyte, because we usually have a 1 terabyte or a 2 terabyte hard disk on our laptops or usual machines. So a terabyte is like 1000 gigabytes or 10 to the power 3, or to be very clear, 1024 gigabytes. And then 1024 terabytes makes a petabyte. Now we are talking about 600 petabytes, which is like a huge data. Even 1 petabyte data is very huge. Now, this much data, even storing the data becomes a problem. You and I cannot store it in our laptop. So we have an entire engineering behind the distributed computing storage, and which comes with the Hadoop and other big data technologies. With these technologies, you can store the data on multiple machines and treat the framework as if the data is stored on a single machine and work on the data, which is like one thing. But secondly, there are various engineering components involved, and cloud makes it simpler. So Microsoft Azure is providing its cloud services where we put the data on the cloud. The cloud itself is composed of distributed machines, and then we have the data stored. Also, we can work with the same algorithm which we use for a standalone machine to work on this data, which is put on the distributed machines, and we can gain insights from the data. So that's the second part, or the second complexity of data science, when data becomes bigger. But for most of these things, whether it comes to big data engineering or gaining insights from a standalone smaller data set, Python is very, very useful. Python as a programming language has numerous libraries, and it helps us quickly get some insights, or get the details of what is there in the data and run machine learning algorithms. So this session is centered around the Python introduction, so we'll take you there. And now, as a whole, what is data science composed of? I use the word domain agnostic. So I said that it has nothing to do with life sciences. You can apply data science to any domain. So that's true. The algorithms used in machine learning or data science, they are agnostic of the domain where you want to use them. But in order to become a good data scientist, you should have some knowledge of the domain. So there are three important components which makes one a good data scientist. One of them is domain expertise. So why do you want a knowledge of the domain? Even though the algorithms are agnostic of the domain, but having enough business insight will help me know what is important or relevant for the business and what is not. So I might run a complex problem, a complex algorithm to solve a problem, but that problem, solving that problem might not be very useful for that business. And I may solve a simpler problem in terms of algorithms, but that could be very, very useful for the business. So domain expertise helps us decide what to solve, what is more important, what is more relevant. The next expertise, what is required when doing data science, is coding skills. So you have an idea what you need to do on the data, but you want the machines to work on that, whatever is your idea. So if you want the machines to work on your idea, then you should know a programming language. It's a way you can interact with a machine like a computer scientist does, or anyone who wants to talk to a computer would need knowledge of some programming language to make the computer do the job which we want them to do. So some coding skills are required. And the third very important property, or very important pillar of data science, comes as the mathematics and the statistical knowledge. So you want to gain insight, any pattern which you want to detect, the algorithms are nothing but at a very, very low level, they are based on the maths, which will help you assess the data agnostic of what domain it is coming from. And that mathematical and statistical knowledge is very important in order to solve a business problem. So you have your maths, you know something about the domain, and you have enough programming skills. All three of them together, when used, make you a data scientist. Okay, and we are handling one of these pillars today, that is the coding skills, and we can do it with numerous languages. We can do it with Python, we can do it with R, we can do it with other statistical languages like SPSS or SAS. We can also do it with languages like Java or JavaScript. So there's no denial. Although they have lesser packages and we have to code more, but yes, we can do it with Java, with Scala, with various languages. But the most popular language is R and Python because they are open source and they have numerous libraries. And out of the two, Python is easier to learn compared to R. And that's something which I feel. And also is capable of handling bigger data loads, which R is not. So it has more support. So we'll deal with how to get started with Python. Do some of you have some exposure to programming, or do some of you know Python as a language? Class, do you have some exposure? Does any one of you have some exposure to programming, or do you have some knowledge of coding in some language?
Yes.
Yes, which is good, because that will make you that will be easier for me to explain what I'm talking about. But even if you do not have, this is a very good language to start your coding skills. So let's say you haven't programmed, you have been a business analyst, you have done some Excel work, but you haven't programmed in any language. Getting started with Python is super easy. So our intent is for those who know Python programming or some programming, it will be slightly easier for them to grasp this session. For those who do not know any programming, they will still understand enough to get started with Python. So this is more to arouse your interest into learning of Python, and I'll show you the path. How do you do that? Show you some basic things and guide you through the websites which you can use for learning. Okay. So again, programming is also a skill, so it will take some time. In this session, we'll get exposed to it. We will have to learn, we'll have to practice on our own to learn it. Now, let's understand the data science process and how and where Python fits in. So if you look at the data science process, it involves with first thing, business understanding. What do I want to solve? What is important for me? What is more relevant? And what should I solve first? Once you have that understanding, the next step is, do you have data available? Past data, which can help me solve that problem. So how it has been solved in the past, not directly, but indirectly, we can infer that from the data. How we infer that is depends on the algorithm we are using. But let's say once we have the business understanding, we want related data for that problem. So that's, once we get the data, we need to understand the data. We do some exploratory analysis. We want to read the data in a machine, and we want to see what is there in the data. We also prepare the data. So let's say we have a target in mind. Let's say I want to be in a position where I can help a bank take a decision of whether to approve or deny a loan. In that case, I need data to be present in a specific format, the right data set in a specific format on which I will build a model. So this data preparation stage is the next important stage when it comes to your learning of data science or doing a data science job. The next thing is building the model. Building the model requires that you use an algorithm, a suitable algorithm for that problem, and you use it on your data set to create a model. A model is a function which is learned from the data. How do you learn that? Using the algorithms. But you want to learn a function which will help you answer some questions like whether to approve or deny a loan. Or maybe you will learn that and the function will tell you how much loan to approve for a particular customer. So that part is called modeling, building the model. Once you have the model in place, you would want to evaluate how good the model is. So there has to be some metric which tells you your model is good or bad versus some other model. So there has to be an evaluation of the model. And the final thing, if you're satisfied with the metric results of the model, then you would want to deploy the model. So this is the entire path in which a data science project works. Now you can see these arrows going back, and they're talking about the iterative nature of this path. So let's say if we start from business understanding and we collect some data, once we look at the data, we realize that maybe we need more data. So I get back to business, I ask for more data, and this could be an iterative loop from data to business. Once I know I have the required data, the next step is logical step is data preparation. I prepare a data and I build a model. I use some algorithm to build the model on that data, but I realize that maybe I should try some other algorithm also. Now the data preparation depends on the algorithm on which I'm trying to use this data. So this data set I'll pass through an algorithm, and the data should be prepared in a way which is more compatible for the algorithm to understand it. So this modeling and data preparation phase, they are also iterative in nature. So you prepare the data, you build a model. You may want to try other models, so you again prepare the data for that different model which you want, and you do some parameter tunings, few things you might change, and then you again do the modeling, and you keep on repeating it till you think that it looks like a okay model. When you realize that it's a okay model, you go ahead and you evaluate your model, how good your model is. And if the evaluation results are not very good, you can also repeat the process. You can go straight to the beginning of understanding what I'm trying to solve. Have I taken the right data set? Then preparation, better algorithms or newer algorithms, again modeling, again evaluating. So I can create several models and evaluate, and then out of them, whatever is my best model, which I think is okay to solve this business problem, I will go ahead and do some test cases. I know this is working. A product will be built around it, and it will be deployed in production environment. And that's how the complete process. This is the complete process of data science. This is how a complete project will be completed. So this is the way in which you're helping the business take decisions based on data, and we also call them data-driven decisions. So you have a business problem, you get the right data for it, you prepare the data so that some algorithm might be run and a model might be built on the data. You evaluate how good the model is, and if you are satisfied with the model, then you deploy it. There are specialized roles in data science, and many of us would want to start their career in data science, and we might have seen these roles advertised in various companies. So let's understand them slightly deeper. So we have these data analysts, data engineers, data scientists, architects, and developers. Now we see that the roles on the top, they are more related to domain expertise. So a data analyst is someone who understands this domain very well and can analyze the data in the sense of whether it's relevant for the domain. Whereas when it comes to developer or data architect, they are more technical people, and the technical emphasis is there. How to solve this problem using some programming, how to build the machine learning pipeline so that no error comes up. So those are the jobs of a developer as well as an architect. A data scientist and a data engineer, especially a data scientist, sits in between. So he has enough technical knowledge to build a tool, and he has enough domain knowledge to understand what is relevant. He definitely has the mathematical insights, and he can build models which could be useful. So that's where data engineers and data scientists often come. And again, slight difference could be our data scientist is more knowledgeable when it comes to understanding the mathematical inside of an algorithm, where the data engineer is very good with quickly building models using some libraries. So whether he is an engineer on, means he engineers solutions on a standalone machine, or whether it's big data engineer, what he can do is he can do data manipulation, he can prepare the data sets, and he can apply some algorithms using some libraries. At times, he or she, as an engineer, might not know the intrinsic details of the library, why it works the way it works, but at an abstract level, an engineer can engineer solutions quickly. A data scientist may improvise on those solutions because he also has the mathematical deep dive about those algorithms. So that's where all the roles stand. And data scientist has been the #1 job role in 2018 as well as in 19. So median base salary, you see 130,000 per annum US dollars, which is a very good salary when it comes to USD. Okay, and I'll be sharing this presentation, this link where you can get the details of the presentation, all the codes which I'll be talking about during the presentation, so you can go ahead and study them later too. Okay. Now, when it comes to Python as a programming language, I'll assume that most of you have not used it, or maybe I'll give you some knowledge about how to get started with this. So let's say the first tool which you would know, if it is not installed on your system, what you'll do is you'll go to Google and say Anaconda installation. I'll tell you why Anaconda and why not Python. So Anaconda comes with Python, the latest version of Python, but also it comes with a lot of the libraries which are useful for data science. Okay, so you can just open the link and you can check the installation video, and this first link, download the Anaconda installer. From here you can download this installer and install Python on your machine. So it will install Python and all the related, most of the libraries. Some libraries you might have to install later on, which do not come with the Anaconda package, but most of the data science libraries, 90+% of libraries, they come with the Anaconda package. So in Anaconda you will get Python, Python 3, plus 3.8 is the recent version which they're doing with Anaconda. Plus you'll get all the very commonly used data science libraries, especially the scikit-learn, the NumPy, the Pandas, the Matplotlib. I'll talk about these libraries, but so you install on this, you download it, and you follow the link. If you want to install it as an admin so that you can run it anywhere, then you need admin rights on your machine. Otherwise, you can install it on a user folder. If you're using a work system and you do not have admin rights, you can still install this in the user workspace. So once this is installed, what does it come with? So in my machine, it is installed. So it comes with two of the GUIs. For normal Python coding or any coding, you can use a notepad and write some codes. Okay, but or you can also write in the command prompt in the shell of Python. So let's say in my machine, Anaconda is installed, Python is installed, and the path is set. It is installed with admin rights. So if I write simply Python, I can go to Python's shell. And if you see, this is Python 3.6, not the latest version. And if I'm in this Python shell, I can use Python as a number of things, but I can use it as a calculator for sure. So 5 plus 7, I'll get this result. I can do a 7, 8, and it's 56. So you can use it as a calculator. You can do some print statements. But what if you want to write a long code? Let's say you want to write a program which tells whether a number is prime or not. So if you want to do that, then you can always do it in the shell, but it will be slightly difficult. So you would need something where you can write your code. Maybe you can write it in a notepad, but again with notepad the settings are not very good. So you need something where the indentation of the code is also maintained. Let me just exit this. So there are two tools which come with the Anaconda installation. One is the Spider and the other is Jupyter. So once you get this installed in your system, you will see both these tools. If you go here, you can see something called a Spider. If you can see my machine, this is the Spider. And also there is something called a Jupyter Notebook. We'll start our session today. We'll do everything on Jupyter Notebook. This is easy, lightweight tool. But yes, Spider is also good and it is often used in production environment. It has other facilities for testing the code and other things. But a basic tool will be a Jupyter Notebook. So we'll start with this. You click on this. Right now my Jupyter Notebook is already open. So let me just close it and open it for you. So we close it and let me open. So you write Jupyter and that's how you start. The screen will come and then it will open it in a browser. So in my system, my machine, Chrome is the default, so it will open it up in Chrome, but otherwise it opens it up in some browser. This is the screen. This is how the screen looks like. Okay, this is just the home prompt. So if I go into my system, the folder structure, and you will see this is in the user space. So if this is where we are, desktop, and this is space. This is where we are. We have applied ML and details. Okay, so we install it. Now next thing is you can open a new workbook. Let's say I open a new Python 3. If I just have one Python in my machine, I can open a new book, and this is a place where I can start coding without worrying about various details. I can start learning Python right from here. Let's say first class, that's the name of the file, underscore Python. And yes, there was a question from someone.
Yeah, so can we install Anaconda or Jupyter on Linux machine?
Yes, you can install on Linux. So if you go to this link, installing on Windows is just one option. Installing on Macintosh, installing on Linux, all these options are there, right?
Okay.
Okay. Again, installing Anaconda is not the default thing. It means it's not that you have to install Anaconda always. You can just install Python and one by one you can install the data science libraries you need. But for the newcomers, I would recommend to install Anaconda, because while installing libraries, setting paths, a lot of things need to be taken care of. So if you are new to it, install Anaconda and the Anaconda installer will take care of all the things, installing all the libraries. That's just one part. The second part is updating the library so that there isn't a version mismatch. So let's say I'm using a library of Pandas and I'm using a library of Matplotlib and the versions do not match. So in that case, if I want to see some visualization, it's not working for me. So Anaconda will ensure the version, each and everything is updated and it is synchronized. The update is synchronized, so every version there's no mismatch. So only compatible versions are there in the machine, if you get my point, right? So for beginners, Anaconda is the best way. You get an Anaconda installed and you can just open, like we did, some new Python book. If you want to store it somewhere else, let's say I want to make a folder and store it somewhere. So what I can do is I can go to new and I can create a folder. And in this folder, I can make a workbook, right? Or I can even travel to paths. I can go inside a folder and here I can create a folder and then do something. So there are various things which I can do. This is the root folder where I'm going. Now, anyways, this is our first file. We'll do most of the work on this file. And apart from Jupyter Notebooks, we also have Azure Notebooks. So which you often see if you do everything on Microsoft Azure. So which is very similar to Jupyter Notebooks. They look, everything is nearly the same. It's Jupyter for Microsoft. So if you are doing it on the cloud, you can get the Microsoft Azure Notebooks. They are powered by Jupyter and they are exactly the same. Only difference being you are working on the cloud. Now this particular cell is nothing but, this is not a code line, so this is a markdown. I'll show you what a markdown is. And this particular is a line where there is a particular cell, coding cell, and we have these import statements. I've imported some libraries, matplotlib.pyplot, and the name of the library is plt or numpy or scikit-learn. This is for machine learning algorithms, and this is the cborn, which is also a data visualization library built on top of matplotlib. We also use a lot pandas and other things, okay, which you'll learn slowly. These are the library or extra packages which we use with Python to get our data science jobs done. But basic Python, no package is required. So basic computing, simple program like seeing whether number is prime or not, or calculating a factorial, you do not need any packages. But doing specialized jobs, we need a package. We would prefer a package. I'll talk about it. Why would we do so? Okay. So let's go to the screen first and let's understand a few things here. So in the screen, by default, this widget, you see, this is the coding cell, but I can change it to markdown, and then I can write it as if it's a notepad. With hash, I make it bold, and I simply write my first Python class and do a control enter. So that's how this looks like. Okay, so I've made a heading. This is the markdown cell, and therefore markdown is selected. You can just add few more cells, and by default any cell is a code cell. Now in a code cell, the way I did on the command prompt, if I write 5 plus 7, it will give me 12. If I write 5 into 7, that will be 35. Okay, so I can definitely use it as a calculator. I can also do my basic printings. So this is getting used to with the language. Let's say I wrote Avinash name and Python prints it. Okay, so this is easier than the command prompt. So first thing. Now, in order to work with any programming language, we need to know the data structures which are provided by the programming language, the basic data structures, and how do we do basic things? How do we store a type of data? So we'll look at it one by one, and then I'll also import libraries later on. So we'll talk about the arithmetic and numeric types in Python, the strings, some specialized data structures like list, tuples, and dictionaries, membership testing, list comprehension, and finally importing some modules. Okay, so let's take them one by one. Okay, so let's look at numeric operators. So we can use a plus, which is for addition, a minus sign, which is subtraction, this multiplication, then single slash is for division, double slash is often called floor division. The difference being, if you do a let's say if I do a 5 by 2, 5/2, so I'll get 2.5 as the output, which is a float number. But if I do double slashes, I'll get 2, not 2.5. Why? Because I floor it there. I can do a floor or a ceiling kind of thing, and I'll just show you in the code too. Apart from that, this is for a square, taking squares. If I do 5 double asterisk 2, that means I'm saying 5 square, which is essentially 5 into 5. And this is the modulus operator where I just want the remainder part. So if I do 5.5 by 2, but I do not want the quotient 2.5 or the floor division of quotient 2. I'm looking for the remainder 0.5. So then I do this percent sign. It's called a modulus operator. Next thing would be the logical operators, like 1 less than 2 or 1 greater than. Obviously, one of these statement is correct. Either 1 is less than 2 or greater than 2. So I'll get true. Or is my logical operator. I can have an and then it will get false because both conditions cannot be true. So those of you who know some of the Boolean gates or have studied, or even if you do not know, let's say logical operators, if I have an or in between, either one of the conditions should be true. If I have an and in between, both the conditions should be true for my output to be true. Okay, that's the basic difference. And this less than and greater than, they are called comparison operators. So I compare one with the other. So let's see it on the notebook right now. So let's say we use things like, let's say length is equal to 15. What does this mean? So I have defined a variable and I have stored a value 15 in it. I can define another variable, let's call it breadth, and let's store 3 cross 5. I could have written 15, but I'm storing 3 cross 5 and still breadth will store 15. So let me just do it in a different set. Let's say I want to print length. So I'll write length and length has the value of 15, whereas breadth will also have the value of 15. I can do it in the same cell also. The good part of Jupyter Notebook is the last line is printed by default. So I do not need a print statement. Although if I write a print statement, I'll get the same output. So if I write a print statement like this, I'll get output, but there is a slight difference. So I get output. Difference is by default Jupyter Notebook stores the value of the print or the last line in a variable. Here it is out 5. Here it has not stored that value in a variable, it is just printed. And if I want to run all the code at the same time, I can go to kernel, I can do a restart and clear output, which will clear all the outputs printed till now. And the restart happening, kernel is ready, all the outputs are gone. I can also do a restart and run all, which will run everything for me. Okay, so all the 3 lines are run, right? So let's remove this part of print. I do not need it. Last line will be automatically printed. Want to do? I want to do, let's say, find the area, and let's say these are the sides of a square, most probably square because both length and breadth are same. Let's say area, and which it like a rectangle, length into breadth. I could have also done. So if I've stored it in a variable area, I will not see the output. If I want the output, I'll have to write area, right? Which is nothing but 15 square. So these are the basic operators. Anything else you can do, let's say you want 8 into 8, you get 64. But if you also want 8 square like this, you can write 8 square 2, which is also 64. Okay? Or maybe 7 square 2, which is 49. So all arithmetic operators can be used. We were talking about division. So let's say if I do a 7 by 2, 7 by 2, I get a value 3.5. If I do a floor division, double slash, what do I get? I get 3. If I get a percentage, I just want a remainder. So what is the remainder if I divide 7 by 2? And I get a remainder 1 because 2, 3 are 6, the remainder is 1 and the quotient is 3. Right? Floor division gives me the quotient and the percentage gives me the remainder. This I can just call this quotient and this as remainder. Q and R are stored. Print Q, R. You can also write something like equals Q remainder So I hope the kind of basic concept is clear, right? So with the printing statement, I can print more than one things. I can use a comma here. I can also use a sign of addition to do this. So I can also have a addition sign which can, let's say I want to leave some gap. So I can do this and another comma. And in this gap, if I want to leave a big gap, I can do something like this. Or I can use a tab character. Now this is about basic printing. Sometimes, not sometimes, most of the times we can also do it with a plus sign, with a positive sign where it will concatenate the string, but there is a difference. If you use
I
a
see a
positive
raise
sign,
of hand.
yes please.
Do you want to say something, Malva?
Could not get you. Could you ask once again?
There's one raise of hand. I'm just asking them if they want to say something.
Sure. I am so sorry, I did not see that. Okay, let me just check. Thank you. You can intervene in between because I'm not looking at the screen when I'm toggling through many screens. Yes, please ask.
Yes, sir. I have a doubt. Like while installing the this Anaconda in other drive, like D drive, I'm not able to search it in the search box.
You're not able to search it in the search box when you're installing Anaconda in the D drive.
Yeah, another drive.
Another drive.
Yeah.
Okay. That should not be the case. So that should not be the case because I have installed Anaconda in D drive and E drive of my machine, and I was able to search it. But if you're not able to search it, you also know that where it is installed. So you can, although you should be able to search it. There's no reason that. So what I mean is, wherever you install, you do not install Anaconda somewhere. So you have to understand the installation happens means the so installation will always happen where the processor knows where the program is. Okay, but when you say I install Anaconda in D drive, that means that the folder which you want to open. So let's say for my machine, the folder which I open when I go to Jupyter Notebook, this is the folder where it opens. So it is in this folder where I have all my programs. So this is my users folder. So if I show you, let me check. I go here and you go to C drive, you go to users, and let's say this, and in this user folder we have this AVML workshop, the same folder names. If you check, this is where the Anaconda takes me. By default, all the files in this folder are this. So if you look, this is Anaconda 2, this is AVML workshop, which you can also see here. This is AVML workshop, this is Anaconda 2. You do not see the files with the dot because you cannot read them here. Okay, but this is the default. But if you change this place, if I change it from users, if I want that during the installation I change the path and this everything, that the basic files they go in D drive, I could have done it and I could have seen everything here. In D drive I can make an Anaconda shell. Again, that does not mean that Anaconda is installed here. It only means by default this will be the place which will be used for storage of libraries related to Anaconda or my programs or my notebooks. That's all it means, right? Installation means there will be a copy which will be stored in programs which will run the code, which will store Python, which will store things like libraries, which there are some libraries which use multi-threading and they need access to your machine. So all that will be there in C program files. Am I clear on that? Okay. So maybe what you're talking about is changing the user space. Now, because those libraries like Jupyter Notebook is an executable program. So Jupyter Notebook, I can search any executable program, but if you want to see where it is located, so I go to Jupyter Notebook, I have two types because there's one Python 2 and one Python 3. But let's say I go here and look for open file location. So I see that this is stored in the Anaconda 2. So that means when I installed, I gave the location of this user directory. So Anaconda 2 was installed here in the user directory. This is where my Jupyter is installed, right? My Jupyter Notebook is here. I can find it out. Now, when even the Python exe file is there, but that was not a mandate. It was just because I chose to install it in the user directory and not machine-wide with the admin rights. Even later on, I went ahead and set the paths. So you can set the environment variables here. If you set the path, and you can find it anywhere. Therefore, I can find it anywhere. Some of you, do you guys know this? Advanced system settings, and then you go to environment variables, define, right? You can define the paths here. So maybe if you're not a very advanced user of machine, then it might take some time. There could be some issues why it is not seen, but technically there is no issue that if you have the work location in D drive, that should not stop you from finding the program, because the exe file will always be installed either in the user space or somewhere in C where the system, the operating system has access on it. Okay, it's just this workspace. I chose it here, but I could have put it anywhere. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, sir. And another thing is like while executing the program, for example, you are doing a equal to 1 plus 2, no, sir. By after pressing enter, it is going into the next line, sir. While executing, what we have to do, sir, for this?
Okay, what do you think? Okay, so what you are saying is if you are doing 1 plus 2 and you are pressing enter, that's what you're saying?
It is going, yeah, sir.
Yeah, this is what you said. So you do not do a enter. In this machine, you can do a control plus enter. So a control plus enter means you want to run it. The other way of doing it is that you can also run it from here. So there is a play sign. This is for stop. This is for play. You can run. So you just click on this run. This will also run 1 plus 2. Let's say I do a 5 plus 7. If I do not understand, I can do a run. And 5 plus 7 is 12. I can do a 6 into 4, and I can do a shift enter. Still it works. So a control enter or a shift enter is something which should work. If you have a Macintosh or Linux, it could be slightly different. Most of the machines have it with shift enter, if not with control enter. That's the shortcut.
Yeah, sir.
Okay. Also, you can just refer to this. So let's say Jupyter Notebook shortcuts. And this is slightly different for Windows versus a Linux machine. So you have shift plus enter to run a cell, control plus enter also to run a cell. This is for Windows, right? Therefore, we could run it both ways. Option plus enter run cell to insert another cell, or I can also insert a cell like this. Like what I do is I do a caps lock and do a B. That's a shortcut. I can insert a cell. I can insert a cell above by doing a caps lock plus A. So there are a lot of things. You can also delete or undo a cell from all these options. Okay, so it will take some time. You get used to it, and you can also check these libraries for shortcuts. So go to this website and check all the shortcuts.
Yes.
Okay. So that's a good way to start. And slowly, you don't need to mug it up. Slowly, you will learn these things. So it's okay. Now, so where were we? So I was talking about these Jupyter notebooks, and we talked about these. Then we also talked about, let's say, these logic comparison operators. So let's say I have A is equal to 15 and B is equal to 20. These are simply two numbers stored in two variables. Now I want to check whether A is greater than B. So if I write A greater than B, what I'm saying is, essentially I'm saying is whether A is greater than B, yes or no. So the answer is false. No, A is not greater than B, and we all know because A is 15 and B is 20. If I write here whether A less than B, then I'll be correct. Okay. If I write whether A less than equal to B, either less than or equal to B, and I'll still be correct. So you get the hang? Now, if I want to use something like, if A greater than B, I know this is incorrect, but or either A greater than B or A greater than 12. So now this condition A greater than B is false, but A greater than 12 is true. So one of the condition is true, so it will be true. If I replace it with the AND, this is again a logical operator, then both conditions should be true. Then it won't be true because A greater than B is false. But if I modify this condition, instead of 20, I make it 14. Or let's say 12. Okay. Now I check A greater than B. So the first condition is true, and A greater than 12, second condition is also true. So this will be true. Does everyone get this point? Using comparison and condition operators together. So this is the next thing. These are the next set of operators. Apart from the mathematical operators, the arithmetic operators, we have this greater than, less than, greater than, equal to, less than, equal to, not equal to is also an operator. If I want to check A not equal to B, that means I'm checking whether A is not equal to B, and this is true, A is not equal to B, so I get it true. Okay, so all the comparison operators will always give me a Boolean result, whether a true or a false, depending on whether the condition is true or false. Okay, these and or are logical operators, so I can concatenate two operators. If both are true in the AND case, then only I will get a true. All other cases in AND case I'll get a false. For OR case, if any one of them is true, my result will be true. Okay, so let's check a few more things. We'll keep coming back. I'll keep toggling from the presentation to the screen so that you get a more hang of how it happens in real life. Now, string literals. So when it comes to string literals, a literal is anything. Let's say here 15 is a numeric literal, but let's say if I store a string literal, let's say I say name, and the literal is Avinash. So Avinash is a name, and let's leave it here. Okay. So if you want to see what is stored in name, you will see Avinash. Good. Now, normally I have stored 15 in A. If I do a into 3, what will be the output class? What should we see here? Okay, that's a simple multiplication. I believe everyone is aware that we'll see a 45, 15 into 3. But what about if I write name into 3? Name multiplied by 3. So this is something you take care of, that but this operator is overloaded. So when there are two numbers and there is a multiplication sign in between, it works as regular multiplication. So here 15 into 3 is 45. But if I do a name into 3, that means name will be repeated 3 times. So name is a variable here, not a string. The name has stored Avinash. So Avinash will be repeated 3 times. If I write something like this, then name itself becomes a literal because I put it in inverted quotes. Then name itself will be repeated. Does everyone understand this? Any questions around it? No. Okay, great. So, and it's okay if you have a question anytime, feel free to interrupt in between. So we just saw string literals. There's one more thing I would talk about. Let's say if I write anything in inverted quotes. So I have written name is equal to Avinash. Let's call it name1. Name1 equal to Avinash, and let's do a name2, and let me write it. Let me make it more relevant. Let's call it f underscore name, first name, and let me call this, because we should keep variable names so that it is more understandable. So first name and last name, and let me just store these into variables. Okay, so I have stored them. Now if I want to print both of them, I can always do that. The question is, first name is stored in single inverted quotes, whereas last name is stored in double inverted quotes. Can someone tell me what is the difference between the two? Anyone who has some exposure with Python?
There is no difference, I believe.
That's right. That's right. So that's the correct answer. There is essentially no difference. Thank you. This was Praveen, right?
Praveen only.
Yeah, thank you. So there's essentially no difference as far as Python is concerned, whether we store it in a single quotes or within a double quotes. Python takes it as a string. But, and I'll say there is a but here. So let's say I want to include something like, let me just make a sentence. And this variable is, this is Avinash's pen. Now the sentence is this is Avinash's pen, so that means this pen belongs to Avinash. Okay. Now if I have this single inverted quotes, it ends here. So as a programming language, it believes that this part is a string and it will lead to an error. Okay. What can I do about it? Simplest way is I can use a double quotes outside. Inside double quotes, if I use single quote, then or inside single quotes I can use double quotes, or inside double quotes I can use single quotes. Either ways. So I started with a double quote. A single quote will not end it. So if I print this, did you get what I'm trying to say, class? Do we understand this? So although there is essentially no difference between a single and double quotes, but when I want to print a single quote or a double quote, so let's say if what will I get if I print f underscore name, what should I see? If I print f underscore name, I see Avinash. If I print l underscore name, I see a Mishra. Okay, so if I print it, the quotes are not printed. The output may have the quotes because this is storing. Output 42 is the storing Mishra, which is the string literal. But in reality, in printing statement, there won't be a quote. But if I want this single quote inside should come, what would I print? Let's say if I print sentence, then that single quote will appear. Okay, and it could be the either way around. So if I want double quotes inside, something like this. Avinash said Python is pretty easy to learn. Okay. So because the statement was said by Avinash and you want to put it in double quotes, but you want the entire thing to be printed, and then if I print, what do I see? Or if I do like this, what do I see? Okay, so that small trick you can play. If you want to print double quotes in the string itself, then you have to encase it into single quotes. If you want to print single quotes, then you have to encase it into double quotes. Sometimes there are other ways with which we can deal with it. Let's say there is something y, and if I have written something like Avinash's, okay, and I know that I want this to be treated as apostrophe s. So what will I do is, another way is I can put a backslash here. If I do a backslash, that means it will ignore the programming meaning of inverted quotes. The programming meaning here is, the Python meaning of single quote is that this is a string, but backslash will let it ignore that meaning and just print it literally. So if I say print y, I can print it. Okay, so these are a few things which we will discover. There are many such things which we can discover while playing with the language. Now let's so apart from the string literal part, let's see what other things are there. Yeah, so you can access strings as if they are a chain of characters, and each one having their own. So let's say if I do a f name, what do I see in f name? I see Avinash. Okay, but what if I just do f name 1? So this works as if this f name is composed of characters A, V, I, N, A, S, H all clubbed together, where A can be accessed with the index 0. So indexing starts with 0 in Python. V with a 1, I with a 2, N with a 3, A with a 4, S with a 5, and H with a 6. So 0 to 6 all indexed to each individual character. So if I do a name 1, I'll get V. Right? So I can access individual characters like this. If I want to do something else, let's say I want to start with 0. So I start with 0 and I go till 6. That means I'm essentially saying that print entire f name, because sorry, if I go till 7. So I'm essentially saying print the entire name. So what is this called? This is called slicing of a string. Okay, let me make a markdown and explain you what slicing is. So the next concept we'll learn is slicing. Slicing is in which I access the string but not with just one index. Like I'm not accessing fname 3. Fname 3 is easy. So I'm not accessing that, and let me just also have a reference fname here. But I'm not accessing 30123, which is the fourth character, but I want to access a bunch of characters. Let's say I want to access NAS. So I want to start with something like, so slicing will be when within these boxes I want to access a bunch of characters continuously, and the first thing which I specify is the start index, where I want to access from. The next thing is, let me just remove this start. Next thing is I want to give the index before which I stop. So stop, which is itself not included. Let me just mention it. Stop not included. Whereas the start, this is included. And the third thing, which I can also have a third thing. It's called
Avinash, one question, Avinash. It's not printing last character when we give range. Is that correct? When we mention the range, it's not printing last.
That is what I am about to explain.
Okay.
So what I say is, when you slice a string, the first thing which comes is there are three parameters which can be dealt in slicing. So we all know what fname is, right? So fname is Avinash, right? Next thing what we do is, if I say a fname 2, so that will be 0, 1, 2. So I'll get a I. Okay. If I give a range, fname 2 to index 5, so, or let's say 6. So what we'll do is, it will take index 2, which is 0, 1, 2, which is I, then index 3, then index 4. It will also take index 5, but it will not take index 6, H it will not take, because I say start is included, stop is not included. Do you get my point?
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
It's the way options is that I include the start but not the stop. So if I give 2 to 6, it will take something from NAS. 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 things. NASH. Okay. So INAS. Because 0, 1, 2. 2 is INAS. Okay. 6 index is not included. Stop parameter means anything before that. Okay. There is a third thing also, increment. So normally it takes increments of 1 by default. So increment has a default value of 1. So if I have to write default value, I write like this. So that means if I do not provide any value, it will take an increment of 1. But if I do provide a value, then it takes the regular increment. So if I take :1, which is a default thing, I'll still say INAS. That's what I will see. But if I change it to 2, that means after I, it will take 2 steps. So after I, it should go to A. And that's it. Because in 4 letters, there are only 2. I and A should be printed. Do you get this point?
Avinash, can you repeat this increment thing? I did not hear.
Sure.
Thank you.
So let me just explain you something of slicing. So what happens in slicing is, I can take a string and I want to take a slice of the string. So there are 3 important parameters, and how do they come? They appear in this normal square brackets with 2 colons. Okay. The first one is the start. So where do I start slicing from? So I want to start slicing from 2. So that means in Avinash, I'll go to 0, 1, 2. That is I is where I want to start. Okay. And the start thing is included in the printed object. Okay. The next thing is 6. And 6 itself is not included, which means I want to stop before 6. So index 6 is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is before H. That means I want to stop at S. So if I do a 2 and 6, that means I'm starting at I and stopping at S. So I'll get INAS. Is that part clear? Now
Yeah, it's clear. Yeah.
Third parameter is increment. So in INAS, by default the increment is 1. If I've written equal to 1, that means by default its value is 1. So if I do not provide anything, it is doing increment of 1. I, then it goes to N, then A, then S. if I provide a value here, let's say if I write in place of increment, if I write something like 2:6:1, I'll see the same output because this is the default value, right? But if I change it to 2, what will happen? If I change it to 2, it will take 2 steps. So it will go to I, then take 2 steps. Instead of one step is N, the next step is A. So it will take I and A. Do you get my point? So it will only pick alternate because it will go to next. Because I'm saying increment it by 2. Does that make sense? Let's take another example. Let's take a long sentence. Like Anash is a good instructor, and trust me, this is just an example sentence. So I'm not trying to promote myself here. Sentence. So this is the sentence we see, and let's do it in a print so that I do not see any inverted quotes or anything. Print sentence, and I see this. Good instructor. Good. Next thing, what do I want in the sentence? If I write a sentence, get everything. If I write sentence and 0, then I should get A. Right? That's the first index, A. Get A. If I want to get everything, let's say a for loop and each character. So I say for I in, and I'll explain few things like range is something which I have yet to explain. Let's say this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. So let's say in range 30. Okay, or maybe 28. It starts from 0, and I do a, this is called a for loop. That means I want to repeat it. Print. What do I want to print? I want to print sentence of I. So what am I essentially printing? In the first iteration, it is printing sentence 0 because it starts from 0. This range is something. Let me just explain you what range is. So range means it will hold values like this. Starting from 0, it will hold 1, it will hold 2, and it will keep on going like this till before 28. So it will hold till 27 as the last value. Okay. So if you see, like it, something wrong. What is this? Okay, I have to write double. I'm just making this as a comment. So this. So what do you see? You see AVINASH, ISH. What is in the sentence right now? Avinash. Okay. So AVINASH is a good instructor. Okay. So if you count this, this is 0, and the last thing R is 28. If I do a 29, I will also get a full stop. If I do a 29, then I'll also get a full stop. Why? Because for 29 it will go till 28. 0 to 28 is all what is there in the sentence. So I'll also get a full stop, right? But so this is about taking one character at a time out of this sentence. Now, if I want to take a slice of characters, not one character at a time. So I do this, and I write something like, I know this sentence has details from 0 to 28. So these numbers are from 0 to 28. Let's say I want 5 to 25. I want this. So everything between 5 to 25, I want to be printed as one string. So if I do like this, this is 5. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is S. So starting from S, because start is included. Stop is not. So if you look at stop, it will come at 25 will come at T. So just before T it stops. So it stops at C. And this by default is, so if you check the default thing, this by default is at 1. So even if you write this, you see the same output. But if you write 2, that means it will do every alternate. So it will take S, and next thing it will take is this blank space. Next thing is S, then blank space. Next thing is blank space. Then O, then D, then blank space, then N, then P, then U. So if you want to see at increments of 2, this is what the output will look like. Does that make sense? Everyone? Is it clear?
Yeah, Avinash.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You can also do increments of 3. So there's no problem. And if you do increments of 3, then that means out of this sentence, you're going from 5 to 25, which is essentially this, but you're going third. So you go to first, then you don't go to second, don't go to third, go to fourth. So you get S, then you'll get a I, then you go to third again. So 1, 2, and 3, then A, something like this. So we get S, then we get a I, then we get a A, the way I said, right? Every third. You can also do a 4. After S, the fourth one, 1, 2, 3, 4 is again S. Then the fourth one is G. Then the fourth one is 1, 2, 3, 4. So the fourth one is, what is this? G. Okay, we are going only till this. Okay. So the last thing is T. So we are going every word by word. Does that make sense? Here the fourth one was blank. So after G, the fourth one is 1, 2, 3 and blank. And then the fourth one is 1, 2, 3 and fourth is T. So S is GT. You can also do a 5 because we have taken a long sentence to play with it. So this is the way in which you can increment. So you do the first S and then you go to the fifth one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is a blank. Then you go to a fifth one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is a O. Then you go to the fifth one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is a S. So that's the role. This is how slicing works. In slicing, you will slice a string. There are 3 parameters: the start, which is included, the stop before which you have to stop, and increment. By default, the value is 1, but you can change the values if the need is, right?
Avinash, one question.
Yes.
This is about increment, the last one. And can we do a decrement also?
Yes. So you can do a decrement. You can also read it from the end. There are a lot of things which you can do, right? Okay. So let's say I want there's a sentence, and I did tell you that if I print the sentence, Avinash is a good instructor. Then A has an index 0, V has an index 1, and that way if you keep going, this dot has an index 28, right? So which is fine because you can just count and there are 29 things here. So 0 to 28. But if you do a -1, so if you do a sentence 28, what do you see? You see a dot, right? But you will see a dot even, or if you see 26, so or 27, so you see a H. Good instructor, R. Okay, so you see a R. But if you do a -1 or a -2, also you see a dot and R. That means I can read from the end. If you're reading from the end, then you can also decrement. Do you understand that?
Yes, Avinash. Yes.
Yes. As long as you're not doing something which could lead to an error, everything is okay.
And one another question is that if I do not use the start included, by default it takes 0 as the first index, right?
As the first index, yes. So by default, not in string slicing. So in string slicing, what there is no. So let's say I have sentence, okay, and I say 5, which means I'm not saying 0 to 5. When I say sentence 5, I'm looking for the 5th index, and 5th index will be, if I look at the sentence, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is S, this S, the one highlighted, this lower S before H. So that is what Avinash file is. So if it has no colons, then what does it mean is it will just look for that index, not anything included. It's not like the range function. Do you get my point?
Yeah. So what I meant to say was that if I just put
if
a
you
colon
do a colon,
before,
if you do a colon, then it is.
Yes.
Then
Yes.
what it does not mean. Then it means that it will stop before 5. Then what does it mean? This will stop before 5, so it will stop before S, not at S. So it will stop at what is before S? So
that would ideally be 0 to 4.
Yes, A. So this will ideally be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes.
Yeah.
So because I haven't given anything. So if I do not give anything, then it will be ideally 0 to 4. And I'll get 0 to 4. If I do not give anything here also, then what does it mean? It will go all the way from 0 to the end. So it is similar to saying just printing the
Yes.
sentence itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And even if I give a second colon and I do not give anything, that should also be okay. Let me check. Yeah. So you see, it takes a default value for the second colon. So it is as good as writing just the sentence.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Akshay.
So what I'll say is to learn any programming language. Programming is like a skill. So the best way to learn is to practice. So try.
Avinash,
Yes.
last in reverse indexing, it will not start with 0. It will start with -1,
Minus
-2.
one. That's right. Otherwise, it will be a confusion, right? If it starts with 0, then it will be confused. The system will not know that whether you are referring to this S or this E. So if you say 0, it means you are talking about, sorry. So in this sentence, we have Avinash is a good instructor. So 0 is A. If you say this, if the last thing instructor R or dot also you mean 0, then that cannot happen. There cannot be two zeros in the same sentence. So if you're reading it from the end, you can do a -1, right, which will be dot. If you do a -2, so what I mentioned was a -2 will give you a R, which is R of the instructor, and also a sentence 27 will give you the same thing. Both are R. In this sense, if you see, if -1 is giving you this dot, so Avinash is sentence, and let's say the first one, sentence 0. That will give you a A. If you reverse it and you write a sentence -28, -29, because 0 to 28 is 29, so -29. That will also give a A. So everything in this sentence can be accessed with two index, one negative index, one positive index. When you start with positive index, the starting point is 0 and all the positive numbers. When you start from the end, it's starting from -1 and all the numbers till the beginning. Okay, but do not get confused a lot of times, but sometimes you might see this. So I'm just telling you how to go around it. Okay, I hope this is clear.
You got it. There is no -0. -0 is 0.
Minus
I got it.
zero. There's just one 0. So it is not a positive 0 and a negative 0.
Should be unique. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay, welcome. So that's about indexing and slicing, and then there are other things. So let's say I go to complex data types. So I till now we have dealt with strings and numbers and all that. Okay, so let's say I said x is equal to 10, and I wanted to do a x cube. So I said x cube, which is 10 cube 1000, which was easy. But let's say I want to define an array, so a list of numbers. So I can do something like this, and let's give it another name so that no one gets confused. My list. Okay, and my list has numbers like 5, 7, 9, 11, anything. Yeah. So let's say 50. So let's not keep them just numbers at two intervals. So this is the ordinary list, normal list. It is saved here. And now what all can I do? So list is a data structure. Now this data structure works the way very similar to the way string works. So if I say my list and 0, then what do I get? I'll get a 5, the first item in the list. If the first item in the list is not 5, and let's say the first item is 556. Now this is also a number and a valid number, right? Now it is not behaving like this one will not behave as if it is a string. It will behave like numbers. There is a numeric list. So first item is 556. So if I say my list 0, I'll not get 5. I'll get 556. Very important point, right? So this is a list of numbers separated by commas. So it is behaving like a string, but in the sense these are not individual characters. This is one item, this is the second item, this is the third item, and I access the items in the list by the same indexing scheme. Did you get the point? Rest everything, slicing, everything is same. So I can also do a slicing here. My list, and if I do something like 1 to 4, so let me check. So 0, 1, 1 is 7, 2, 3, and 4 is 15. So 7, 9, 11. Before 4, so till 3. 1, 2, 3 is what I do. Okay, so I can do a slicing. I can also do that increment thing in this. So if I take an increment of 2, then I'll get 7 and 11. not the 9. Is that point clear to everyone? Is this clear?
Yeah, Avinash, thanks.
Welcome. Okay. So list is one data structure. There could be other data structures in Python. So this is where you can store numbers. You can also store strings in a list. So I could have defined a list with strings in it, and the strings could be, let's say I call it str list. My list, I can have strings. Avinash, and let's say, let's keep the first name. So let's say. Let's say take 3 of them. So this is a regular string list. So a list of strings for me. And if I want to print it, I'll write str_list. So now if I access this list, so let's say I say str_list and I say 0, then I'll get Avinash. So this is the difference, because this is a list of strings. So first string, if I'm just accessing Avinash, what do I do? If I want to access V, I can really say str_list 0, and in this 0, I know this is a string and I want to access the second character. So I can say str_list 0, and out of 0 I want 1. So that means str_list 0 will be Avinash, and in Avinash I'm looking for one index 0 1, which is V. Is that clear to everyone? The nesting of the indexing scheme. Does that make sense?
Yes, Avinash. Subslime thing.
Yeah. Okay. And I can have the nesting anywhere here. So I can also say 1, 2, 5, and there's no problem with it. Okay. So this is about strings, and you will play with it to learn more about. So this was about list. Now let's take the next thing, tuple. So let me call this my tuple. Now what is a tuple? A tuple is very similar to a list with, and there's one more thing. In a list, I can have numbers, I can have strings, and I can also have like combined with numbers and strings. So I can also have 34, 45, and everything could be a part of the list, which Python allows. So in a list, you can have several combined data types. So 34 and 45 are numbers, where these are within quotes are strings. I can have them together. Some of you, if you're familiar with other programming languages like Java and Scala and maybe C, then you'll realize that list is not behaving like a array. So it is not an array of numbers or array of strings, because in an array there are stringent rules that you could have everything of the same type, which is not the case in the list. You can have different types, numbers and strings together in the list. Okay. So next thing is tuple. A tuple is very similar to a list, and I'll just take the example of numbers, but I can take of strings too. So it is very similar to a list, but the difference being a tuple is uneditable. So you cannot edit a tuple. So let me just write this down, that you remember this. Tuples are uneditable lists. Okay, let me make this a markdown. So a tuple is a list, but you cannot edit that list. So what do you mean by how can I edit it not? So let's say str list was a list. If you wanted to make some editing in this list, let's say what I wanted to do was this str list. The second word is Ashu, A-S-H-U. Let me just change it to 0, 1. So 1 is the index, and from Ashu, I want to change it to, let's say, Shalini. Okay. Now, what is this saying? str list 1, Ashu will be replaced by Shalini. And if you just print the list, you can do this. So you did a editing to the list. Okay, so a list can be modified. But when it comes to tuples, so I have defined a tuple, and if I want to edit that tuple, so you'll see that I won't be able to edit this tuple. So I've defined this tuple, and let's say I say my underscore tuple, and I say 0 1 1, that is 5, and I want to replace 5 by something like 10. I cannot do that. Object does not support item assignment, which means tuples are used when I do not want to edit things. If I had a similar list, let's say my number list, my num list, and if I had things like the lists are always in square brackets, where tuple are in this round brackets, 3 5 7 9. I could have easily edited this list. So I could have written my num list 1, and instead of 5, if I want 10, I make it 10, and I just print it, my num list. Now, what is that? This is not okay. So I did not run this cell, so it is not defined. I run this cell and then run this cell. Okay. So do you understand the basic difference? The basic difference between a tuple and a list is that lists can be edited, tuples cannot be. I can also append a list. So let's say I have a list and I want to append things to a list. I want to add it to the end. I can do many things in fact, but let's say for convenience I'm just doing some num list, and I want to use inbuilt function. So I do a dot, I give a tab on my machine. I do a tab and I see all this what I can use in list. So on a list data type, I can use something like append, clear, copy, count, a lot of things, extend, and everything is different. Extending is for adding two lists together. Appending is just adding one number or one item to the list. So I can do a list.append, and let's say I append a 23 to it. And if I print it again, you'll see a 23 is also added to a list. So I'll get 3, 10, 7, 9, and 23. I cannot append to a tuple. And how do you realize that? If you write my tuple and you do a dot and tab, you will just see two functions. You can do a count and you can find the index. There are the two things. So you can count how many items are there and you can find the index of any item. So let's say I do a my tuple index and I want to find the index of 7. So what it will tell me is what is the index of 7, which is 2. So 0, 1, 2 is. So I can have these two functions. Whereas in my numeric list, I have multiple functions. I can do a lot of things with list. Okay, so that will also tell you what is available, what is not. So this is another property of this data structure.
So Avinash, can we have different data type in a tuple?
Different data types in a tuple. Within a tuple, you want to have lists? Yes, you can have. So you can have nested lists. So if I understand you correctly, what you mean is that my special tuple. What you mean is, let's say I have a tuple like this, and I can have lists in my tuple.
Avinash, we don't need to define data types, right? By default, it.
Yes, Python is intelligent enough to understand. So this language, we do not define data type, but there are things with which you understand. So let's say this round bracket understands that you are defining a tuple. With square brackets, it gets to know that within the tuple, there are items itself are lists. Is this what you asked? So I can have a tuple like this.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. So let's say when we are working with databases and we do not want each of the rows to be changed, that's when we use tuple for each row, because each row is uneditable. I do not want to, let's say I have 5 items in a row. I do not want a user to come and edit and put a 6th item in the row. Otherwise, it will give an error when I'm running the query. So each row, often in databases also, each row is called a tuple, right? So that's where it comes from. So and it works similarly, but I can have nested structures. So anything, list within a list, list within a tuple, tuple within a list, and other data structures like dictionary. Dictionary is another important data structure. So I believe we'll be talking about it in some slide. Although I'll say that there are a lot of things here, and we certainly a 1.5 hour class is simply to get you started. It won't fetch you, means you'll not become excellent at it, but all I want is that you all pick up with Python. I'll share the link from which this material is created, and you can start with it. It is self-explanatory, and if you have any questions, you can also ask. So before dictionary, I'll do a membership testing for you. So let's say list and tuples, both these types, they are structured data. Now, if I want to check a membership, whether something is a member or not, so I can do a my number list, and I know the numbers are 3579. Okay. So what I want to check is my num list, or I can write something like this: 5 in my num list. So I'm asking a question whether 5 is in my num list, and the answer should be true. Sorry, 5 false. What happened to my num list? 3579 was, oh, I updated the 5 to 10, right? Do you all remember? So if I write 10, then it will be true. So 5 was no more in my num list. Okay, I can do it with tuples also. Let's say I have this tuple, my tuple, and I can do 5 in my tuple, and you can give any names. So I've just chosen my list and my tuple, and if I, instead of 5, I do a 15, 15 is not present, so I'll get a false. So that's called membership testing. If you have a data structure and you want to check if something is a member of the data structure or not, you can do it with the in statement. Let's check the two more things, important things. So the variable names in Python. So how do you define a variable name? First thing, the name should be understandable. But what are the rules? So rules are, a variable name must start with a letter or the underscore character. So you cannot start a variable name with a number. It has to be with a letter like A to Z, anything, uppercase or lowercase, or it has to be with underscore. Usually you will see that the program files and libraries have variable names starting from underscore, whereas we normally started with a letter. It cannot start with a number. It cannot have special characters in a variable name. You cannot have special characters, and variable names are case sensitive. So if I have a variable name like, let's see, if I have a variable name like uppercase A, lowercase a equal to 10, and uppercase A equal to 20. So if they two are different. If I check, if I just do a, I'll get 20. Whereas if I do a lowercase a, I should get a 10. Sorry, 15. Why? What happened? 10. I might have defined a in 10 somewhere. Okay. So this is where I define it. Anyways, so you can see they are not case sensitive. So one thing you should know about variable names is that they are not case sensitive. They should start with a letter. They cannot have special symbols in a variable, and they can have numbers but not in the beginning. Okay, so these are the restrictions on variable names. And another final restriction is the variable name should not be a keyword of Python. So let's check what are keywords in Python. Python keywords. Look at the keywords list. Let's say I'll do a list, and okay, so these are the keywords. So if you look, then we have this false, none, true, and, as, assert, async, await, break. Each of them have a special meaning in Python. When you learn Python, the day, let's say you start learning Python, and the day you know the meaning of each of the keywords, like I know the meaning of each of these keywords. When you know the meaning of each of these keywords, what is doing, that means you have learned, let's say, 50% of the Python. So you can comfortably do any coding because you have used each of these keywords somewhere or the else. Like true, false is a keyword. Await is a keyword which is used in multi-threading. Else is a keyword. Import is a keyword. We will use import. Let's say I want to import some library, then I'll use something like import. So there is a popular library called NumPy, and today the time does not allow us to cover that. But let's say if I want to import NumPy, I can also use the as keyword if I want it as a variable. I don't want to write the long name NumPy and just write NP, so I can do that. I can also skip the NP part and I can just import NumPy, so I can import it. Now this asterisk means it is a big library. It's taking time to import the library. Once it is imported, this asterisk will end. So asterisk ended. So that means I have NumPy now. Now I can do is np dot and I do a tab. I'll see a word array, and let's say I create a NumPy array. NumPy is a library written in C programming language. So, and Python uses this library for faster numerical computations. So let's say I pass a simple Python list in a NumPy and create an array out of it. So this will create an array for me. Now because it's an array, so I cannot have different data types. I can always have either numbers or string. If I have both, then it will treat everything as a string. If I just add a string here, then it will treat everything as a string. It will start treating 5, 7, 8, 10 also as strings. So you see, inverted quotes everywhere, just because I added a string in the mix, and then everything is, because everything has to be of same type. So anyway, we won't be able to cover NumPy, but I wanted to tell you that you can import libraries. Okay, and what we did was we saw a lot of data structures. Let me guide you to the resource section. Okay, I'll send, in fact, in this presentation which will be shared with you, the link is shared. If you look at this page where I talked about the link, in the beginning there was a link. So that link will be this one. So you can visit this at this link, and you can check all these, whatever I talked about today. Everything is present and much more, because I could not cover it in this time, but all these things are present. So I'll just show you. So these reference materials, these code files are there. All the codes are there in the PPT, but these are the files, notebooks, the Jupyter notebooks. There are other materials for NumPy reference. I mean, this is advanced material. So everything is present at this, and even this presentation is present, which will be shared with you. So please go ahead and start learning things. Those who want to get comfortable, it takes time to learn a programming language. It is a skill, and it will take, let's say, few, at least I'll say that 5 to 6 weeks to get comfortable. If you practice or start doing it for 2 hours a day, you would take more than a month to get comfortable with the language. But once you get comfortable, then you can do a lot of things related to data science with Python. So I wish you all the best on the journey, and hope that most of you pick this language. It's a simple language. Pick this, start learning it, and do some programming. Okay. Any questions for me?
Avinash, what is a good certification source, if you can?
Certification for what?
I mean, Python language certification.
I would recommend not to go for any certification. Why would you pay for something? So when you want a job, if you are looking for a job which is based on your basic Python skills, so what will they do? They'll not look for your certificate. Only thing they will do is they'll ask you a few questions, and they'll get to know whether you know Python or not. Okay, so don't do certifications. Do these open source resources like I'm sharing. Attend these sessions and ask your questions in the community. I mean, you simply have to work hard on your own, look for free courses, and start doing it. Do not wait for certifications, because certifications are not valuable. A certification won't land you up in a job. What will land you up is clearing the interview, and an interview you will not be interviewed if you do not. I mean, it's not the case that you will not be interviewed if you do not have a certificate. No one cares about a certificate. We care about how you perform in an interview. Does that make sense?
Yeah, go ahead. Thanks.
Avinash, would there be another session, continued session?
Yes, there are many advanced sessions which are planned, but I would ask you to go through these resources, because there is a lot more when it comes to a programming language. So the resources which I have shared, even those resources would take you at least 1.5 months to get comfortable with, and that is just the starting point. That's how where you learn Python in some libraries. But there are other sessions which are planned. So this was the introductory session, getting started with Python kind of session. But there are other sessions where you will use machine learning libraries like scikit-learn and all, and you will use it on data and resolve things. So those sessions are also planned, and I believe you'll get update in the community of when such a session is planned next time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
One more question, Avinash. Last question.
Yes.
We use this Flask Django for web development, etc.
Yes.
What kind of library we use, framework we use for stock market related, financial related analysis?
Okay, depends. So when you talk about analysis, so Flask and Django is used when you're developing a website, right? Or you need a software development code style. Okay, but when it comes to data science, it's not that level of coding standard is not required. What you are supposed to do is you quickly experiment with data and create a model. If your model is good enough for deployment, you might get an engineering team, especially if you're a data scientist, you'll get a set of data engineers and developers who would install it or who would uh, let's say club it in their website. So then those developers would, right now, Spider is a good framework. Jupyter notebooks are very good to start with, and Spider is one of the good frameworks for doing development level data science coding in Python. Spider comes with Anaconda. Uh, you do not need Django unless and until you want to be a Python developer. And so there are sessions planned even for Python developers where you're not learning Python for data science, but you are learning Python so that you become a software developer in Python, and then you can develop websites in Python. There, Django and Flask is they're like primarily used.
I have one question.
Yes.
For Python, I mean, like, let's say you want to become a data scientist. Is it mandatory to, like go ahead and have strong knowledge on database and also, like kind of scripting something?
Okay. So when it comes to becoming a data scientist, uh, things are slightly tough. Tough in the sense, first of all, there is no set standard. So some companies may want a data scientist who knows some scripting languages, who is exceptionally good at mathematics, and I'm talking about graduate and postgraduate level mathematics, and then he's exceptionally good at working on big data frameworks like Spark, Hadoop, Python, R, Java. He knows everything. But that kind of
By mathematics, you mean algorithms, right?
yes, algorithms and comfort level with the programming language.
Okay.
So let's say there are sometimes irrational requirements which are usually not fulfilled because no one candidate can know all the things and all the technologies. But the important point is that to become a data scientist, you would need comfort with one programming language. You would need a decent level of mathematical knowledge to start with data science. Although this is a journey, so when you start with data science, you become better at, let's say, I start as a machine learning engineer and I start with, let's say, the Python language. So I start becoming better and better with passing months at machine learning with Python. Second thing, while I'm creating solutions and doing machine learning with Python, I will also be inquisitive to know more about algorithms. So also learn maths of those algorithms simultaneously. Take assistance from seniors in the team who guide me that what is there in the package and how does it work. And it's a way of becoming better and better every day. So there is no fixed frameworks. Knowledge of database, I would say, is very important, especially if you're working for BFSI sector. So banking, financial sector, they usually store their data in databases. So if you do not have knowledge of databases, how would you extract the data and how would you start analyzing? Knowledge of SQL also comes very handy when you're dealing with big data sets, and big data frameworks offer languages like Hive and Spark SQL, which are SQL type languages. So it's good to learn a lot of things. You do not have to be exceptionally good, but you should be aware and you should know a little bit of all those things.
So when you say SQL language, and it's not like NoSQL database, right?
Oh, there are NoSQL databases which are very, very popular on big data frameworks, but most NoSQLs, let's say, they offer a SQL type of language. When I say SQL type, that is not exactly the SQL language. So some commands are different, but more or less it is the same.
Yeah.
So there are
one more
NoSQL
question.
databases also.
Right. One more question I have. Now, like most of the online courses or, institutes, they actually offer data science, I mean, Python on data science. Okay. But let's say someone wants to pursue DevOps. Okay. So, but how that person identify what are because if you go to the institute or online courses, they are mostly for data science modules. Okay. Now, how would the person, approach for DevOps?
Okay, so if you have, let's say, foundation in networking and you want to work in DevOps, then those courses are not beneficial. I know a lot of websites and a lot of institutes are offering courses in Python for data science because there are a lot of jobs for machine learning engineers who could work on Python and build some basic level machine learning models. So that is the prime reason. But you have to look for a better course for DevOps, although they are less, but you'll have to look for such courses on a different website or with a different institute because these courses are not beneficial.
I mean, is there any way to find out what are the modules that can be applied only specifically for DevOps?
Way to find out. So let's look for the requirements of administrator level roles. So let's say as administrator, what all you need to know, or let's say let's do a quick search. So courses for DevOps. Okay, because I'm not from this domain, but let's say you want to be a DevOps engineer, and
I'm just talking in specific to Python.
yeah, so see, DevOps as a field would have courses, and most of the courses would be in Python. The only reason being that Python is a simple programming language. Okay, so Python is quick to learn. So let's say if we check the first course, let's say I can write here also in Python. DevOps using Python. Again, I would say that go for so DevOps with Python learning path. What is this website? So let me just share this, or can you see this? realpython.com learning paths Python DevOps.
Yes, yes.
You see this? Okay, so I would say do a little research, because I'll tell you why I cannot give you a very good guidance here is because I am not from the DevOps team. I'm also not a Python developer. Okay, what I am is I've been working as a senior data scientist. I know a couple of languages like R and Python to do my data science jobs. Okay, so do ML engineering, I know Python enough to do machine learning solutions on Python, and I know R, and I also know Scala, and I also know Java, and I also know MATLAB. So I know a lot of languages, but just for the purpose of solving data science problems. If you understand, any full-fledged programming language has a lot of things: website development, DevOps, a lot of things are there. But I do not know Python. The Let's say I'm not a very heavy user of Python. Okay, I only use Python for my need, as in for data science needs.
Understood. No issue.
Okay, thank you. Any other question, class?
Yeah, Avinash, like, will I have this recording available in the portal like you have shared?
This recording will be available.
Okay, so
yes.
For recording, you will find it on the official Reactor YouTube channel. So it has the recordings of all the Reactor meetings over there. You can find it over there. It has the Reactor global account. You can also find such events at our Reactor meetup page. That is also in the chat. You can just check over there. And you can also sign up for the Microsoft Source newsletter.
What about PPT? Will that be shared, Avinash?
Yeah, the link which I have shared, that has all the codes and the PPT at that link. The link I talked about, yes, the PPT will be shared along with the recording in the same meetup, and the link which I showed on the screen, or it's there in the PPT also, this one. You can also note this down. So projects data science 1. Although this has much more material than it is covered in the class, but it's good for you as a learning path. It's like introductory, but it's like a full day material.
Yeah, because I'm curious, there are 70 slides. We covered just 20 slides, it seems. Thank you.
That's true. I did not focus on the slide. I just ensured that we get what we are covering instead of just covering. So we'll have other sessions. And as I mentioned in the beginning, this is simply to arouse your interest in Python. You have to, learning a programming language is like developing a skill. So you have to go to this resource which I've shared, start learning. If you have questions, ask in the community. Okay, if they're not answered, they will come back to me and I'll answer them.
Sure, thanks.
Most welcome.
Can you open that link once so that I can note it down?
Was that a question? I could
Can
not.
you open the links once again so that I can note it down?
Yes. This one.
Yes.
Let me just share it. Give me a sec. It was also there in the presentation. Let me just share it.
Here the chat is not there, sir.
Okay, the chat is not there. Okay, so then in that case, yes, please note it down. Let me just share the screen. Okay, and wait, give me a sec. This is
You can also find the link later at the meetup page for the session. So
Yeah,
I'll
that
just
would
make
be
sure
better
to drop
actually.
it in the comments.
Yeah,
So
if you share
you
it
can
in the
just,
meetup page, that everyone would be able to, you know, get it.
yeah, of course, I'll get it done for you.
okay. Thank you, Paras. So do we? Yes, we will have the link in the meetup page too. So don't worry about the link. You'll get the link before it is there in the slide. And any other questions for me? Any one of you?
So my question is like how we can integrate this Python to other like hardware things.
Python to hardware things. What are you doing primarily?
Sir, I am electrical engineer, sir, student. So I would like to integrate this Python to the machines or something else.
Okay, so many programmable logic languages, they use the API of Python. So you can code in Python, but the lower level language is talking to the hardware. So that way that is possible. Otherwise, Python primarily is not developed for using it with the hardware because it is not fast. The advantage of Python is that it is very quick to learn. So most of the code is like the English language, and you will quickly start. You can quickly start with Python. So someone who does not have a programming background knows enough maths, picks Python very quickly and does data science with Python.
Yes, sir. And my another question is like if we can integrate the Python in MATLAB, sir.
Yes, you can integrate Python with MATLAB, but MATLAB itself is a very good tool. So if which is also a paid version, so they have like usually many libraries, not as much as Python, but yes, integration is also there. There are other things. Let's say you develop a model in R and you want to use it in Python, or you develop a data science model in Python and you want to use it in Java because the system server is in Java. So you can extract any model in terms of data science. There is something called PMML. It is very similar to a XML. So it's called predictive model markup language, PMML. So you can save the model, download it as a PMML file, and then use that file. That file itself is programming agnostic. So you can use it in Java, in R, any other language. You can do it with all the languages. So not just Python. So you can just build a model in any language and any other language may use it. So interoperability of programming language is usually a feature every language provides. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Most welcome. I hope I answered most of the queries. Is there any other question someone wants to ask?
Avinash, Praveen here.
Yes.
Coming to the hardware part, this Alexa, all these things are based on Python or what? I mean, if I want to speak something, are we giving some natural language instruction
That's right.
that is getting converted into Python code, or how exactly they're working?
Okay, that's a very good question. So let me tell you, all the machine learning or so let's say natural language processing is a part of machine learning. Deep learning is also a part of machine learning. So all the NLP based algorithms which are a part of machine learning is based on, at a very low level, they are all based on the maths. Maths itself is language agnostic. We say that maths is the language of the universe. So it is language agnostic. It has nothing to do with Python or R or Java or anything. Now, once you understand what you want to do, you mathematically understand what you wish to do. Now you have to do it with a huge data set. So you want a programming language to help the machines do it for you. And that's where programming languages set in. So yes, there are, when it comes to natural language processing, there are a lot of libraries which are available in Python. Python has a lot of libraries for NLP, but so does R and so does Java. In fact, Java libraries are very popular for NLP. So otherwise Python is the most popular language, but when it comes to especially Stanford core NLP, the oldest libraries are in Java, especially for NLP. When it comes to Alexa, what programming language or library Amazon is using it, that doesn't matter. At the end of the day, what matters is what algorithm they are using or what maths they are using to infer what you are saying. Okay, that function is defined. You can use Python to do the same, and you can also use, let's say, Java to do the same, or R statistical language to do the same. So Python has a lot of open source libraries in NLP, very popular ones, and you can do most of the things, but that's not what defines Alexa. Alexa is defined by the main algorithm which runs Alexa. So that's natural language understanding algorithms, NLU. So which is much more than just understanding parts of text, but understanding intent to some level so that you can respond back. And the APIs might be available in many programming languages, including Python.
Got it. Thanks.
Welcome. I hope I answered most of your queries, right? Does someone else wants to ask something? Okay. I hope it was a fruitful evening for everyone. You understood the basics of starting with Python, and hope you enjoyed the evening. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining in.
Thanks, Avinash.
Thank you, Avinash, for another amazing session. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Again, you can find the recording on our YouTube channel. If you can't access the chat, you can just type Microsoft Reactor on YouTube. You'll find our YouTube channel, and you can access the recording there.
Thank you,
Also, most of you might know about our meetup page, so you can find more such sessions over there. Thank you again.
Thanks, Kunal.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.